It is dark here. The flame of the candle stands still in the air. Nothing moves in this tunnel save our hand on the paper. In her novella Anthem, Ayn Rand describes a post-industrial, collectivist, egalitarian society following the Great Rebirth. The state dictates every aspect of life from cradle to grave and decides what everyone's role is, forcing equality of outcome onto all its citizens. There are no books, no individual rights, even the word I is replaced by we, and no light. The protagonist's curiosity leads him to wander upon a hidden man-made tunnel left from the unmentionable times, where he discovers a new power. I have learned that the power of the sky was known to men long ago. They called it electricity. It was the power that moved their greatest inventions. Europe and other Western nations are facing a very real energy crisis right now. Sanctions have prompted Russia to stop supplying natural gas to Europe, exacerbating the self-inflicted energy crisis beginning with sweeping net zero energy regulations. Germany has been closing down its nuclear facilities for years of their own volition in order to go green. The Netherlands are no longer tapping into their vast natural gas reserves under strict regulations and laws to stop using natural gas completely to meet net zero targets. All of the OECD countries are on the same path, including the US. On his very first day in office, Biden shut down the Keystone XL pipeline, a project that could have increased national energy security and potentially have driven down fuel costs. The Biden administration likewise recently passed the Inflation Reduction Act, a bill aimed at fighting the alleged climate crisis and moving away from fossil fuels. California is at the forefront, and they're already experiencing rolling blackouts and electricity shortages. They are certainly far from the only ones. Energy costs for households in the UK are expected to increase by 80% this fall, which will inevitably lead to incommensurate amounts of people unable to pay their bills, and possibly some having their power shut off entirely this winter. If energy security was the priority, our leaders would change course from an ideological green at all costs stance to one that eases regulation and allows freer markets to find solutions. Instead, they're doubling down, tightening regulations, and suggesting we flatten the curve on electricity.
So what we have to do is flatten the curve and avoid the peak demands. We will propose a mandatory target for reducing electricity use at peak hours, and we will work very closely with the member states to achieve this.
C.S. Lewis reminds us that of all tyrannies, a tyranny sincerely exercised for the good of its victims may be the most oppressive. Those who torment us for our own good will torment us without end, for they do so with the approval of their own conscience.
They say when things happen fast, it's really what happened before, which is things move very, very slowly, and then all of a sudden, they move very, very fast. But it was the seeds that were planted over the course of the last many, many years that advanced this cause today. We talk often about leadership. In the old paradigm of leadership, it was command and control. You'd sell down a vision. We now know it's not about command and control, it's climate control. Creating conditions where success becomes irresistible. Creating conditions where people come together, cross their differences, because coalitions have been built where there's a sense of inevitability because of that climate that has been created, that we will move an agenda forward.
Those who want to flatten the curve on energy as a purported solution to the self-induced energy crises seem to be okay with turning civilization's lights out if it means they can maintain, in the words of Gavin Newsom, climate control. In his book, The Green Reich, Belgian philosopher Drieu Godefriedi explores the Malthusian roots of the green ideology plaguing the Western world. Godefriedi's thesis is that if human CO2 is the problem, then man is the problem. Therefore, man must be restricted, constrained, and governed in all of his activities.
We're developing, through technology, an ability for consumers to measure their own carbon footprint. What does that mean? That's where are they traveling? How are they traveling? What are they eating? What are they consuming on the platform? So, individual carbon footprint tracker. Stay tuned. We don't have it operational yet, but this is something that we're working on.
The climate czars appear willing to sacrifice whatever and whoever, except of course themselves, in order to achieve their ends. Ayn Rand writes, "At first, man was enslaved by the gods, but he broke their chains. Then he was enslaved by the kings, but he broke their chains. He was enslaved by his birth, by his kin, by his race, but he broke their chains. He declared to all his brothers that a man has rights which neither God nor king nor other men can take away from him, no matter what their number, for his is the right of man, and there is no right on earth above this right. And he stood on the threshold of freedom for which the blood of the centuries behind him had been spilled. But then he gave up all he had won and fell lower than his savage beginning. What brought it to pass? What disaster took their reason away from men? What whip lashed them to their knees in shame and submission? The worship of the word we. When men accepted that worship, the structure of centuries collapsed about them. The structure whose every beam had come from the thought of some one man, each in his day, down the ages, from the depth of some one spirit, such as spirit existed but for its own sake. Those men who survived, those eager to obey, eager to live for one another, since they had nothing else to vindicate them, those men could carry neither on nor preserve what they had received. Thus did all thought, all science, all wisdom perish on earth. Thus did men with nothing to offer save their great numbers, lose the steel towers, the flying ships, the power wires, all the things they had not created and could never keep. Perhaps the fictional Great Rebirth and Anthem did not begin with the goal of creating a post-industrial society without electricity. The goal was for all mankind to be equal, for all to be the same, for there to be no I and only we, equitable, inclusive, sustainable, for the greater good.
Climate justice now. People gonna rise like water. Turn this system round. In the voice of my great-granddaughter. Climate justice now. People gonna rise like water. Turn this system round. In the voice of my great-granddaughter.
Rand writes, "But I still wonder how it was possible in those graceless years of transition long ago that men did not see where they were going and went on in blindness and cowardice to their fate. I wonder, for it's hard for me to conceive how men who knew the word I could give it up and not know what they had lost. But such has been the story, for I have lived in the city of the damned, and I know what horror men permitted to be brought upon them."
I guess you've heard of climate change, our critical situation. If we don't turn this system round, we face annihilation. When farming fails, food runs out, folk will get what it's all about. It's up to us to choose our fate. If we don't act now, it'll be too late. Climate justice now. People gonna rise like